Gigi Berardi reading FoodWISE. Continuing with a few paragraphs in this part one, our shared world of food and farming and concerns with government programs. Another example of weaknesses in the federal organic program, here a failure to protect as intended, surfaced in my own neighborhood a few years ago. Organic rules prohibit chemical fertilizers, but allow the use of manure, even if it comes from large non-organic dairies. An organic farm in my region applied manure from a neighbor's dairy, then noticed that many of its broadleaf plants, a majority of its crops, were dying. The problem showed up on other organic farms too. Throughout the whole county, about 60% of the broadleaf vegetables on organic farms died that season. Eventually, it was discovered that the next generation herbicide, aminopyrrolide, produced by Dow AgroSciences, had been applied to control thistle on pastures where that neighbor's dairy cows grazed. But the herbicide remained active even after digestion by the cows and fermentation in manure piles. When the herbicide-contaminated manure was used on the organic crops, the herbicide killed them. So much for those regulations ostensibly protecting organic farmers. I know it sounds like I am bashing certified organic. I like to think of it as questioning. For one thing, the criteria for what qualifies a product to be certified organic, no pesticides, irradiation, or genetic engineering, don't go far enough. But at the same time, I am grateful for the no genetic engineering rule. It means that plants or animals whose DNA has been altered, reworked, or reorganized in a laboratory setting are not allowed. This would include, for example, corn plants genetically engineered to resist the chemical glyphosate, used in the weed killer Roundup. Some controversial work and reporting, which I reference in the notes here, shows that glyphosate in our diet, ultimately, from the use of weed killers on food plants, may carry a carcinogenic risk. Not surprisingly, Monsanto's and Bayer's websites suggest otherwise. Of course, it's not just organic farmers who stay clear of the chemical, but they're the only ones we know for sure who are not using it. Again, we can turn to self-sustaining farms as a potential way forward. Organic farmers who have to import manure are at a disadvantage. There's no way to regulate where that manure comes from, and it's hard for the farmers themselves to be sure. The advantage goes to farmers who can rely mostly on their own farm-generated soil fertility in a more integrated system. Later in this section, I'll mention the farm of Scott Myers and Bridget Waring, who use rotational grazing and cover crops to meet all of their farm's fertility needs. Big monoculture farms can't do this, but farmers who work hard to foster connections with their crops, animals, and land can build their own mini agricultural webs, creating food in a balanced, self-contained system right where they live. Farms where this can happen are often small farms, not the large mega-scale operations that many types of modern agriculture are trending toward. And small farms can thrive. Farmers like the Stapps, the Honcoops, and Myers and Waring, discussed later in this section, are making it happen. Products like theirs don't come close, at least not yet, to dominating the market, but the market is changing. People don't want to eat only mega-farmed meat, dairy, and produce anymore. The question is, how food-wise are the alternatives we're choosing? So tonight, in the introduction to this video, I mentioned some USDA reports on dairy programs and dairy industry. And this relates to my Rally for Dairy vlog that I had, speculating on what was going to happen to excess dairy. And so cheese is one solution we hear if you look at the reports. And then I also have another follow-up to my questions about what will happen with higher education. That's where I am employed, at Western Washington University. And I found an interesting article in the Chronicle of Higher Education where they actually have colleges and universities virtually committing to be face-to-face in the fall, or at least hoping that they will be. I find this interesting, and so I'm sharing it with you tonight.